Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here just a few minutes late to start because I had to log back in again on Restream. So, yeah, wasn't able to get in on time, but I'm here. So, yeah, I'm not going to waste much time because we lost our first few minutes. But today I'm going to be doing some illustration and scene building in Inkscape. So, yeah, just a reminder. The music, as always, comes from Creators Lib Free on YouTube. They produce free music and sound effects for content creators, and you can go and check them out. Alright, so with all of that said and done, let us get right to it. Alright, here we are in Inkscape, and what I'm going to be building today, actually, I'm thinking of a very simple scene with a vase, like a plant pot, or whatever you want to call it, and something to sit on, and maybe like a window or something in the corner. So just to give you a rough idea, let me get my layers open over here. Right, so we're in layer 3. Just want to make sure I'm in the overlay section. I kind of did that line there a little bandy, so let me start again. Alright, so we're going to have some kind of a window in this corner. Or better yet, let me do it the other way around. For some reason, putting the window on the left feels more natural to me, so we'll put the window here up until about this level. And over on this side we will have something like a table with a tablecloth on it. And on top of this will be a vase. And within that will be some plants and flowers. I'm not going to spend too much time illustrating what those will look like because we'll kind of decide that when we get around to actually building everything from primitives and all that. So just going to put something rough here to simulate what we plan to create. Probably gonna have some shadow, well maybe not in this direction, I'll see your own direction, so some shadow around here. All of this is rough, by the way. This is not what our final illustration will be like. This is just to decide where things will be. Just gonna have a window sill here or something. And maybe, I don't know, I don't want to complicate this scene, so I'm going to probably just have like the edge of maybe like a chair or something over here. Alright, so that will be basically the layout of this scene today. Oops. I didn't even realize you could change the highlight color. I never actually tried, so that was accidental. Just that my stylus was accidentally clicking and dragging just now. Alright, so this layer will basically act as our overlay to show us what we're going to be drawing and building. I use my mouse because otherwise the stylus is going to keep clicking and dragging. Never mind that my mouse practically does the same thing for whatever reason. My mouse doesn't like to behave itself. Alright, so I'm going to make this somewhat translucent. And by the way, if you're working with an older version of Inkscape, like say 1.1, I believe this layout may be a little bit different. I'm using a development version of 1.2, so some things may look slightly different. Alright, so let's get around to actually building this layer. So what we're going to start with, or building this scene, what we're going to start with is the backdrop. So I'm going to call layer 1 backdrop. Oh, and one more thing, let me quickly, wait, this is the, okay, cool. This is a different build from the one I was using a little earlier. I have two builds of Inkscape on here and they look slightly different in the preferences dialog. That's a side note, by the way, but yeah, I tend to work with multiple builds of programs and stuff. I don't recommend that, that's just me. Anyway, so, right, just have to make sure we set the backdrop to an actual color and not transparent. And let me also turn on the checkerboard so we can see where the edges of our canvas are. Alright, so good. The backdrop, we're gonna give this a color as well. So for the wall, I'm thinking maybe like a kind of light purple would be nice. If I remember correctly, right, so it should choose this color now when I actually go to fill this in. And if you have snapping enabled and you have snap to, which is it? Alright, snap to page border, that's the one I was looking for. If you have snap to page border enabled, it will snap to the actual edges of the page, so no need to type in the dimensions of your object. Alright, so that will form our page background. Let me just make sure that this is fully translucent. Alright, that's a good color there for our wall. Now we're going to build the window. So let me lock this layer. And in layer 2, which I'm going to rename to window. In fact, let me call this window glass. Because I'm going to separate everything out into separate layers to make everything easier to work with. Interestingly, this has already chosen blue as our color. I don't think that's going to apply to anything. I apply to it because I have to actually select a color manually. So let me just select this again, make sure that it is actually right. There we go. So now when I draw this, it should be the color that I want. I'm going to make it about this size. And by the way, you'll notice that I'm using the drawing that I did earlier as a guideline, and the cool thing is that because it still has objects within it, even though it's locked, I can actually snap to those objects and keep the dimensions intact. Alright, so don't need anything else for the window glass. We're going to lock this layer. I'll get back to recoloring this in a bit, maybe some shading and stuff. But we'll add another layer on top of this, and we will call this window edges. And what we're going to do now is create another rectangle. I'm going to choose a kind of brown color for that. Turn the stroke on. we're gonna copy this color across and turn off fill. Alright, so there we go. Now we do want this to overlap the window, but you don't want it to be visible at the top within the drawing. So what I'm going to do is actually resize through the corner, zoom in a bit so I can actually see where it is. Now you'll notice I have my page borders drawn above the canvas itself. So now I'm going to resize this, and right about there. Just make sure. Alright, I may need to resize a little more because still some of it is bleeding onto the page. Sometimes my mouse gets a little jumpy. You may have better results if your mouse is not as jumpy as mine is. Alright, there we go. So it's not bleeding onto the page at all, and it is still covering the window. Alright, I'm gonna have to resize from this side just slightly. That's good there. Now I'm gonna duplicate this. I'm going to rename it to Edges Backdrop and lock the first one and move this one down. Alright, it doesn't want to move by itself, I'm not sure why. So I just want to drag it, put it down there, and I'm going to recolor this to a darker brown and change the stroke style to be thicker. Alright, I didn't pick up the color I just chose there. Alright, so obviously that only applies on fill. So let me just do this manually. I probably need to report a bug about that. If I remember to do it, I'll probably report a bug because you should be able to select the stroke color from selecting down here. Maybe you can do it over here too or up here, but it would be nice if when this is selected and no fill is enabled that you can choose the stroke color from here. Well, from down here in the palette. Alright, that looks good there. I'm now going to blur this a little bit. And turn the opacity down. Don't want it completely off, obviously, but turning it down quite a bit. This will give us kind of a shadow. Then we can duplicate it and turn the blurring down. Okay, that was accidentally. Alright, right, there we go. I'm going to turn that back up and turn the stroke style down in width. And then we're going to make this slightly lighter. So somewhere in between the two colors that we have previously. Now when you're zoomed in, this doesn't look like it makes much of a difference in that it looks like you just have two edges, but when you're zoomed out, it actually should look as though it's kind of blending from one to the next. And if you want to improve on that even more, you can duplicate it and blur this slightly. And good, that should be it. So we're going to lock this. Now I'm going to turn off this top layer just temporarily. Oops. selected the wrong one. Just temporarily, and this is what the seam will look like at this point. Doesn't look like much, but it's beginning to come along. You can see the window looks like it is slightly embossed and raised above the actual wall, which we're going to shade as well at some point. Alright, so what element should I add next? I will probably add the window sill below here. So to do that, I'm going to add a new layer and call it Window Sill. I often wonder where certain words came from in English, by the way, because sill is pretty close to silly. But anyway, that's a random thing. Alright, so let me choose a different color for this now. Some kind of a dark brown. Or maybe more like this. Yeah, this dark brown here. I'm going to draw a rectangle down here. I'm going to turn off the stroke, of course. By the way, my apologies if you just suffered any break in transmission. I just noticed that the connection was still connected, but the stream was having some issues. So my apologies if you were having any issues hearing me or seeing me. Alright, so for this one, I'm going to drag this slightly out of view and resize it in this direction. And I'm going to turn on the curvature on the edges, so something like 18 should do. Right, that comes pretty close to what I drew here. Now we have two options. Either this can cover the window right here, or we can move this layer below and cover the window. Well, not cover, but come below the window so that it is actually underneath the frame of the window, which I think I prefer. I'm gonna actually define my own drawing slightly by moving it up underneath like this. Right, that looks a lot nicer. And then what I'm going to do here now is object to path, and in the node editor I'm going to delete these nodes here because they're not necessary anymore. Turn these to edges, and I'm going to align them horizontally, well, vertically, and then move them right up in here to the edge of the page so that they're not sticking out of the canvas. Let's just try holding control and dragging. Right, there it goes. It should be perfectly where I need it to be. Good. And now what I'm going to do is duplicate this and choose a darker color. And then I'm going to resize it. Alright, I want to lock those axes there, so well, lock the width and height, and then resize it like this. Because I have snapping enabled, by the way, it may jump around a little bit because it's trying to find where to snap to. And I want it right in the center as well. Get it kind of small. Alright, I'm going to disable snapping temporarily so I can resize this freely. Because because my mouse and snapping don't always go well together. Alright, there we go. Turning snapping back on. I'm going to drag this across this way. Trying to, of course, keep it in the center of this other object. And then what I'm going to do is select these two nodes and move them across in this direction. I'm using the keyboard to do this, of course, because if I do this with the mouse, it will be a lot more tricky to achieve. Alright, so about there, let me just zoom in a little bit and make sure I have enough room for what I want to do. And now what I'm going to do is blur this. What you should notice is that it gives a nice shade to this section of the window. But to improve that even more, what I'm going to do is actually turn this now into a gradient. Now just so I can see where the gradient ends, I'm going to temporarily make this red. Put this in the position I'm going to want it to be in. What I'm doing here, I'm not going to do what I usually do when I'm shading. For most of my streams, I'll create a fake light source and kind of figure out where the fall off should be. But this time we're not going to do that. We're just going to use the angle of the gradient to signify where our fall off is. So let's say the light is coming from up in this corner, or at least it's coming through the window in this general space up in here. We're going to drag the gradients, start somewhere around here, and that will be this dark brown here. And the red, which is temporary of course, we're going to put that to fall somewhere around here. So now what I'm going to do is copy this color and put it where red is and make this transparent. And so now you can see that the shadow falls more to this end than to this end. Now what I can do to increase that effect of the shadow even more, that was accidental there just now, me changing the color. What I can do is I can either turn blurring down, but I don't really want to do that, or, and the reason I don't want to do that by the way is because I want this to be nice and soft, the shadow and everything be nice and soft, or I can duplicate it, which is what I just did. And after duplicating, you can move this around a little bit so that it is not directly sitting on top of the original object, and it gives you a nicer effect so that the shadow looks a little more natural and everything. So I'm going to duplicate it some more and just shift these around to get kind of a randomized fall off, because usually light coming through like a window or anything like that is going to be filtered through, say, like the trees or anything like that. So to help things to look a little more natural, you can kind of play around with your shadows to make them have a degree of randomness to them. But of course you want to emphasize the darker area of the shadow to this side. So I'm just going to duplicate these some more over here and shift them around. And there you go. And now what we're going to do is select this object here. Okay, that's kind of hard to select. So let me go back to the layers and objects over here. Turn on object view. And the one that's sitting at the bottom, of course, is the one that is below everything else. So I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to move it downward using my keyboard and across slightly. And now what I'm going to do is actually change its fill. Alright, so I want this to be a somewhat lighter or darker color. I want to have contrast with this. see what darker looks like first. I'm going to put this at the very back of the drawing as well, or the back of the layer I should say. Or I shouldn't say back, that's really the bottom because it is the bottom of the stack. So let me not use the word back and confuse you. It's at the bottom of the stack. And I'm going to move this around just a bit until I get the result I'm looking for. Let me see how it looks when it's later. Okay, darker works best. Not too dark, of course, but darker works best. Now we're going to select the one immediately above it and duplicate again. But this time now on the fill, I'm going to make this somewhat light and translucent. And the next step, of course, is to resize. I said of course, but y'all have no clue what I'm doing. My apologies. So I'm going to resize this a bit. Alright, snapping is being ridiculous. So let's turn off snapping and try that resize action again. Now my mouse is now being ridiculous instead of snapping being the one in the way. So I'm going to drag this over here just a bit and resize it from the bottom. Now for those who are new to my streams, there may sometimes seem to be some madness to my methods, but it is not madness. It actually has a lot of sense to it and a lot of logic to it. So this here is going to provide us with some counter shading that blends between the two, and if you're already thinking ahead of me, you should know that I'm going to blur it. And this of course adds to the natural look that we're aiming for. Now if you want, you can tweak the color a bit, either the color or the actual color or the alpha value. You can tweak that a bit to get the desired effect. And of course I'm going to need to move this down to the bottom and then move it back up by one, well by two really, so I was covering the two other pieces of the window sill and not the shadows, because we want the shadows to sit on top of it. We can duplicate this now and choose a darker color, and then add a gradient, and then we're going to adjust that gradient using the node editor. All of this is just to get our colors to match the different areas of the window where the light is falling. Now if you want, you can go even further and add like blotches, lines, different stuff like that. I probably will at some point, but for now I want to move on to another part of the scene. So like bigger details I'll add a little later. So for now I'm going to lock this layer and hide all that stuff there. But you should begin to see how this is coming together nicely, looking, you know, not necessarily photorealistic, but relatively realistic. Looks pretty good. I may even include something in the window itself, you know, like to give you something outside. And I don't mean a photograph. I could actually do another illustration and clip it to the window so that it actually shows up within only this space. But we'll see how that goes depending on time, whether I do that or not. So the next thing I want to add now is the actual table that this is sitting on. Okay, how did I just do that? That was accidental. Right. Sometimes my mouse gets a little overexcited and jumpy. Not my fault, just the mouse that I'm using. All of my mouses are like that, and I'm not sure if it is the surface I'm on or what, but they tend to jump all over the place. It can be rather annoying at times. Anyway, so table is the next thing we're going to work with. And since it's covered by a tablecloth, I'm not going to make any differentiation between the two. So I'm thinking this could be like a green or something close to that. So probably gonna go with teal for this table. I'm just gonna drag a rectangle here, and I want the edges to be straight. Even though I'm gonna end up curving them, I want them straight because I don't want those extra nodes. Then object to path. And by the way, when I say I don't want those extra nodes, it's not that I'm not going to add nodes, it's just I don't want nodes I don't need. So I'm going to add them specifically as I need them. So these two, select them, add a new node in between, and then just move it up here. I don't think we are going to need any more necessarily. So this one I'm going to set to auto smooth. You can see that already curves nicely around the edge there. Actually, I'm gonna need one more in between here, I believe. At some point I may remove it though if it's not necessary. So we'll see how this goes. Let's make this one auto smooth as well. And move it up to here. This one we're going to turn into a curve, and then a corner. And the reason we did that, turn it to a curve, gives us the two handles that you saw, and then when we turn it to a corner, it allows us to move those handles independently. So I can now do this, and I can make it curve into this edge right here. Move this up all the way. I need to move some things around at some point again, just to make it match where it needs to go. Now, as much as possible, I prefer to use auto smooth, but sometimes you can't avoid doing things yourself, so you do what you have to do, basically. Oops. Once again, my mouse is being special. Now the challenge here will be getting this nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is introduce another node here. And I'm actually going to make both of these, well, all three of these auto smooth. Should make life a little easier. Oops, I just went rotating the canvas by accident. Bad habit. Okay, let me drag this over this way. And this over this way. That's satisfactory for me at least. And this one, I'm going to drag it right to the corner of the page down here. And then drag this point over to here, giving us a nice line. Let me turn on snapping so I can make sure that this sits where I want it. And that should be roughly it. Just going to tweak this slightly to line up with my drawings. Really useful that snapping allows me to do that. Oops. Good. Everything, oh, not everything. One node is sticking out like a sore thumb. That's this one over here. No, good, everything is in place. And that green line that you just saw come up there, if you were paying close attention, is actually snapping to the page itself, which is something you can turn on in snapping options over on this side. Where is it? Snap to... I'm not sure if it is actually visible on this build I'm using, but you can actually snap to the page border and also, I believe, to the center of the page. I have to double check on the other build I'm using. Again, minor recommendation, do not do like me and use development builds. I'm just special that way, so I don't recommend it, but I do that so I can track new features and bugs and different stuff like that. Okay, so I think the table can stay as is for now. I'll probably add more detail to it to show some curvature and stuff when I'm shading, but for now I'm going to leave it as is and just lock this layer. Right, let me make sure all these other layers are locked as well. And above table I'm going to add, of course, the vase. Let's give this one a different highlight color. Trying to select. I did it over here somehow, but I can't really figure out how to do it from here now because the scroll bar keeps showing up. Let me see if object, there we go. Object properties gives me that option. That's cool. Good. So, what color do I want this to be? It actually is pretty close to the color I'm thinking of already. I want that kind of ceramic look, and I probably am going to shade it as such to give it some shininess, some gloss. Alright, that should be good for me. So again, this time we're going to use a rectangle. I can use a circle as well, or even build this from multiple objects. So I'm just going to use one object one time and build it from there. Oh wait, I have this locked by accident. Let me make sure I didn't drop any. Good, I didn't drop any objects anywhere by accident. Good. Wait a minute. How did this get locked again? Or did it just not unlock? It didn't unlock. Okay, there we go. This color. I thought it was going to choose that color, but then I remembered I had the layer lock, so it didn't actually pick it up. Good. If only my mouse would behave itself, this would be a little faster. Now what I'm doing here, I'm just putting it to roughly the height that I want it at, and then I'm going to build it from nodes like I did with the table. There is a slightly faster way to do it, and that is, of course, to use circles and multiple objects, but I don't really feel like doing that right now. Wait, I forgot to convert object to path. Both of these can be auto smooth, and then I just need to resize like this. I'm going to use my keyboard to position them where I need them to be. Okay, slightly annoying problem, I can't resize these from the ends, from the two sides I mean, so I'm gonna have to move them manually and hope that it is not too far off when I'm done. Oh wait a minute, I just realized something. The other nodes are no longer auto smooth because I added new ones. So let me auto smooth everybody. Let's add some more nodes. Yeah, I think that should be enough for this section. Still can't resize to the sides. Oh well. Now, for artists who are accustomed to drawing by hand, this is probably a very strange process using vector graphics, but I will say, having come from the background of drawing by hand for just about everything, using vector graphics becomes pretty second nature after a while if you practice. I mean, with everything in life you have to practice, but with vector graphics it really is true that practice makes perfect. You begin to learn to use primitives a lot more, and you begin to learn how to build really complex stuff from really simple things. And eventually you begin to realize that you can actually sometimes get better realism than you could if you were drawing by hand. In some cases, not in every case, but you can get sometimes better realism doing this, even easier than if you were drawing by hand. And of course, because you have tools like the calligraphic stroke tool and the freehand lines and stuff, you can still incorporate your hand drawing skills and produce some really good results. But all that being said, I can definitely understand anyone who says that they don't really get it when it comes to using vector graphics. It's something that takes a while to really get accustomed to if you're coming from a background of drawing by hand, because it's quite different. This section up here, I'm going to kind of leave it a little rough because I'm actually going to add another object in here to give like the rim of the vase. Right, so that's going to be a circle, and I'm going to make it dark. Not too dark, of course. I like how Inkscape is trying to figure out exactly where to snap it to. Okay, that's not too bad. The bottom, of course, needs some work, but it's not too bad. I think I'm going to leave this as auto smooth, and what I'm going to do is add some other nodes, auto smooth everybody, and just drag them into position. Hopefully this should work exactly as I want it to. It's kind of like working with 3D graphics, by the way, especially when you're using polygons and you have to do topology. It's kind of the same thing, same principle really, just that in this case I'm working in 2 dimensions as opposed to 3. Okay, so that looks nice. Let me see what it looks like without this top layer on. Okay, why does this always have to jump where I'm not trying to go. Okay, so yeah, it looks pretty nice. This window, of course, is still going to need a little bit of shading work at some point to clean things up, especially like around the bottom here. And over this side, I need to clean up things a little bit, but beginning to come together nicely. Now I'm going to add a shadow underneath this. So new layer, there's shadow. Put that below current. I'm just going to add a circle here. Now technically, so long as this circle is dark, it doesn't really matter what color it is, because we're going to make it somewhat translucent and blur it. So don't worry too much about the color of it, just of course consider the contrast. Want to skew this a bit. Now, after determining the color, of course, we're going to blur this. Well, not color, I mean the alpha values of the gradient. We're going to blur it and then turn on the opacity. I'm going to turn it down quite a bit, but not to worry, we're still going to have a visible shadow. There's a reason I'm making this one so light, and that's because this will be the outermost edge of the shadow first, and then we're going to duplicate and come in from there. Me and my exact numbers, not necessary by the way, really it's about the result, but I like exact numbers when I'm working with stuff. And I do believe, although I have no means to test this as yet, that it does actually make a difference, the numbers you use. Someday I'll have to actually try to test my theory. But I do teach it as well to use consistency in your numbers. As much as that may not seem to make a huge difference, consistency goes a long way, so practice it even there. Alright, so I'm going to put these kind of like overlapping, so we have one going this way, one going this way. I'm going to turn up the opacity on this one. And then blur it some more. Alright, let's move these shadows around a bit. Can be a little tricky to get some things just as you want them in not only in Inkscape but in art in general. Can be a little tricky to get some things just right. I'm actually going to adjust the opacity of the layer itself. Seeing as I'm kind of zoomed out now, I can actually see better what the result looks like. And I kind of wanted to match my mental image too, so okay, wait, not table. Alright, that is going to, well, maybe not quite. Let me duplicate this and resize. I'm gonna then blur the layer itself, because this should give me the effect I'm going for. At least what I'm seeing in my mind's eye. Right, there we go. Still want to shade the edges of this table slightly at some point, but I think it's coming along relatively nicely here. I'm going to actually duplicate the table though and add an edge to that. The style I'm going for here is not fully photorealistic, but realistic enough that it still has, you know, some degree of solidness to it. Kind of like some of the newer DC comic book movies and TV shows. Something like that. Of course, not the live action ones, I mean. Okay, wait. I just had to switch my music, so I lost my train of thought for a second there. But I'm back. Oops, wrong thing. Right, so I'm gonna give this a very thin outline. Now, obviously, in real life, there is no outline, but an outline when you're drawing like this can actually add a degree of contrast and it helps elements to stand out more, so that's why I'm adding this here. Alright, I'm going to move this edge below the table, and then I'm going to duplicate this layer and move it above the table. Alright, it's being stubborn for whatever reason. And a tweak till I get it exactly as I want it. Now this should be much more obvious when you zoom in. The way you're zoomed out is subtle, and that subtlety plays a big role in terms of how your brain perceives it, because it now looks a lot more solid than it was before. Now if I wanted, I could even add a gradient to this so that it kind of like fades out around this end. And the reason for that would be to give a kind of a fall off effect to the edge of the table, but I'm not going to go that far today. Just giving you the insight that it is a useful way to add to the realism of the shading that we're going for here. Let me lock that layer. Alright, so who next? Chair? Yeah, let's add the chair. And this time we're going for an all wooden chair. I've done a similar scene to this before with some teddy bears and I had them on a couch. But this time I actually want to go for kind of like one of those old chairs that you might find in your grandmother's house. I'm not sure why this is not moving layers up and down. That's slightly frustrating. Okay, good. Now, using two rectangles to build this, one of them is going to have a curved edge up here and somewhere along this line, and the other one is going to be pretty straight. So this second one I don't need to do much with other than shade it. Let me see. Object to path, Ctrl-Shift-C. Right, and I'm going to add nodes in between these two ends and these two ends, so that this one can be auto smooth. Right, I'm just going to move this over this way. This one, let me see if this can work with auto smooth as well, and move into the position I want it in without messing with the straightness of this one too much. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Alright, I'm gonna have to turn off snapping to stop that from trying to resize itself according to the drawing behind it. Good. So let's just give this some color. Learning to find realistic color is quite a journey, and I'm still trying to figure out some colors in terms of you know, like matching certain things to their real life counterparts, like certain shades of wood and stuff. But yeah, it's quite the journey. Sometimes you actually have to find a photograph of something you're trying to recreate and copy the colors directly from that, and then sometimes you realize it's actually the combination of different colors that creates what we see and all that. Just mentioning that because it crossed my mind trying to do this chair as I'm seeing it in my head and realizing that it is not as straightforward as it looks. Because achieving realistic color for certain things is just tricky. Alright, I duplicated this, but I'm going to keep it really thin. By the way, sorry if you had any connection issues just now. Hopefully the stream is still running smoothly, but just had another connection dip there. Blame my ISP. Not sure what their problem is. Alright, just gonna move this over to this end. Alright, now let's see what this looks like without this top layer on. Good. Now I'm going to blur these lines a bit. Technically, we still want them to be present, but we want them to be kind of like an ambient shadow, if you will. Oh wait, I have the wrong thing selected. Oh, I see what happened here. So duplicate this, turn off the fill, leave the stroke on, and blur. Move this back, select you, turn your stroke off. Good, there we go. Just tweaking till I get this at the right values. I just turn on the grid by habit. Okay, so that looks relatively okay. Still a little, I guess it's a little straight for me because these old chairs tend to have kind of a rough texture to them, so I'll probably use the calligraphic stroke tool at some point and make this look a little more rough around the edges. But things are coming together nicely here, I think. Alright, so I don't really want to overcomplicate this scene. So what I'm going to do is add the plants and the flowers and maybe some, I don't know. I don't really want to add too much even in the window. I want to keep this really simple. I kind of like the simple feel on this one. I may change the color of the wall though, because the wall kind of brings down the mood of the scene to me, so I may change the color. We'll see. Alright, so let me lock this and add a new layer, which will be the plants. For this, I'm going to actually draw these into place using a relatively thick pen. Let me see if this is thick enough. Nope, it is not. 36 should do the trick. Yeah, there we go. Now, after drawing these, I'm going to use Ctrl L to simplify them. And there are two reasons I'm doing that. You can obviously see that they're getting a little more sharp as I simplify them, but the other reason is because I made editing them a lot easier. So, okay, let me select them one by one and do this instead of at once. So I'm going to just drag the nodes into place and do any adjustments that may need to be done. Now you may be wondering as well about realism in terms of the leaves actually going into the vase. We will work on that shortly. So let me actually just pull them down one time, and I'll show you how you can cover them back up when we're done. I want this one kind of thick. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's group these and resize again. Well, let's give them a fill. They actually don't look too bad as brown, interestingly enough. I think I'm gonna stick with a dark green because they look really nice as brown. So dark green could probably give me a close effect to that. Now there are two ways we can cover these. Either we can recreate the rim of the vase, or we can move this down and then we can kind of like try to open up that area, but it's easier to recreate the rim of the vase right there. So what I'm going to do here is open up the vase layer, select this object, copy, and go back to plants and paste. Put this right on top right here. So let me turn back on snapping so I can get this to go exactly in the center of the other one. Now I'm going to remove all the extraneous nodes. So select them and delete. Alright, I'm going to need this to be somewhat translucent so I can see what I'm working with here. Let me go back to the vase actually and get the circle as well because I want to create a hole in that. So, alright, let me lock plants. Copy this. In fact, no, there's an easier way to do this. Duplicate and then move to layer. I forgot I could just do this one time, keeps everything in place. Right, there we go. So lock vase again, and back in plants we're going to select this object here, make this fully translucent, sorry. Then we're going to select this behind here and this, and use difference. So right now it's opened up right there. And the next part is to add a linear gradient. This is just one method, by the way, that you can use to achieve what I'm getting here. So I'm going to drag this around to the front like this. And there it is. Right, so now the plants are covered up at the front and they're covering the vase at the back. And as I said, that's only one method. There are other ways we could achieve that, some that are more efficient, some that are not, but that's the method that I typically tend to use. Works pretty well. Now we can make these plants even more interesting by duplicating this, flipping it around, adding a brighter green. I wanted this something closer to yellow, but not too sure here. Right, let's put it around there. And for this one, I'm going to use a darker color. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is actually play with the size on this a bit. And then move this back until it is covered. Oops. Now if it overlaps down here, not to worry, we can just edit the nodes on this to cover that up. So select these two, add a node in between, turn on auto smooth, and drag this down. There you go. So now our plants are even more interesting. I think they could stay like that, technically, but I'm gonna still add the flower that I talked about, or at least maybe like, I originally had 3, but I'm thinking 1 probably might look a little better, or 2. So I'm gonna stick this somewhere inside of the plants, or behind them, 1 or 2. Maybe inside, yeah, because if it goes between these 2 leaves here, it'll be a nice look and a nice effect. Actually, I was going to draw, well, not draw, I was going to create a rectangle, but let me draw it instead so I can get a nice stem one time. Do I want freehand lines? Yes, I do. Let me just see how thick this is. Oh yeah, I forget I can adjust the thickness after. So right, let me just draw this line down here. Oops. Not quite what I want. There we go. Is it? I want some curvature, but not too much. Ignore my pedantic self. Okay, that should be nice there. And now we're going to increase the stroke size on this, stroke width, I mean. Give it rounded caps and everything. Okay, not too thick. About 9.6 should be enough. Okay, now let me move this in between those other 2. Alright, right about there. I want it to be visible as going between the 2. Can probably adjust this line with the node editor a bit. Actually, let me see something. If I remove this, yeah, there we go. Removing that node smooth things up quite a bit. I can remove this one so it ends right down here. And I'm going to make this stem kind of a purplish color. Some plants have, oops, I forgot that this is not an object, so stroke to path, right. And then I'm going to make this a kind of dark purple, which is what some plants have. It's a very interesting look that some plants carry. And I'm going to duplicate this and resize. Make it green. You may be wondering why this green line across the other one. Well, the reason for this green is we're actually going to blend the 2 colors together. This is something you typically may not think of in vector graphics, but it's really cool when you do that. It gives you a nice effect. It's kind of like painting in other apps, but not quite. You have to kind of fake it. So let's simplify this. Makes it easier to work with. Nice and beautiful. Let me just make sure too that this falls behind this other plant. Okay, there we go. And now we can blur and adjust the alpha. So we give it a kind of a green shade going up to the top of the stem here, making it look a little bit more realistic. And finally, let's add a flower to it. And for that, I'm going to create some ovals. Don't worry about the color, they're not going to actually stay that color. Just temporary. Now, for those who are following along and maybe using this as a guide, so to speak, I typically tend to picture anything that I'm creating before I actually start building it, and I break it down into primitives. And just a plug for that process, you can go and check my previous streams in the Humanity project, which I do plan to resume at some point and add some more information to that, because there were some things I didn't cover that I had planned and promised to cover. So I'm going to get back to that sometime in the future. Now I have a more steady idea of my schedule, at least in terms of graphics and well, separating graphics and CSS streams on different days. I'm going to begin to plan for future streams where I get back to that kind of stuff. But yeah, as I was saying, you can use the method of visualizing what you want beforehand and then begin to break it down into primitives, and you can use that to guide you in terms of actually building the objects you want to see. It's similar to what I do when I'm doing web design as well. I will break it down into the most simple components and then build from there. Okay, how did we end up with 2 gradients on this? I am not. Oh no, it isn't 2. My mistake. It had looked like 2 because I saw this extra on there. Then I remembered this is a circle. That's why. I'm gonna go with a yellow for these flowers. And each petal will have a slightly different shade. For this one, I'm going to add a stroke as well. In fact, I probably will add it to all of them because it will help to give them some distinction. ahead and add a stroke to these. Let me convert these to paths and modify them slightly to give them a more realistic look. So these both, I'll duplicate them, turn on stroke and turn off fill. Okay, everything looks good there. Good. I don't think that flower needs anything else. It looks nice as is. I could maybe add, I don't know, maybe some, I forgot the term for them, brats or whatever they're called, around the outside at the bottom, but I think I may leave it as is. I like it. Just going to resize slightly, because everything is kind of close to the top of the page, and I want to kind of bring it down from there. Okay, that's really nice. I don't think I need any other flowers actually. This lone flower looks really nice as is. Alright, so that is everything in terms of the basic scene. So next up is shading. And I think what I'll probably do is, seeing as this stream has already gone on kind of long, I'm gonna save this, and next week Tuesday I'm going to continue on with part 2 of this and actually shade everything. So I'll shade the table, shade the vase and the window sill, the chair, everything like that. But that will take some more time. That would probably take like another hour of time. So I'm going to save this and, well, not call it quits, but put a pause on this for this week. I'm pretty satisfied though with how this looks. It looks really nice and it's coming along just as nicely. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'm gonna call this actually. Let's call it Lonely Vase. What I'm going to do actually before I close out is kind of give myself some guidelines in terms of where I want to shade. So let me just call this here initial guidelines, and above it I'm going to add shading guidelines. So shading guidelines is going to tell me where I want to shade everything. So I'm going to put a little, whoops, that is thick. Forgot what settings they had on. Alright, so I'm going to put a little shading around here to add to the realism of the cloth. And then I'm going to have some fall off around here. Maybe some stress lines or something going like this. I could put some extra shadow behind here. The wall itself is also going to have some shading, so like this side here I'll make darker because the light wouldn't be reaching this as much. Also I want to put some shadow down here, kind of falling in that direction. Some shadow beneath here. this. So this area will be the most lit part of the wall, and this area over here the most lit part of the windowsill. Reason being that if you consider a real life scene, certain areas will be less lit because less light is bouncing back on them. So it's not only what's coming into the window, but the light that's bouncing around the room. When we get into 3D eventually, I'll actually be able to demonstrate that in real time, how light will bounce around in a room and give different areas different shades. Alright, so the chair, I'm going to give it kind of a rough texture somewhere along here. Don't mind it going outside the actual line, that's not a big deal. And I'm going to probably give it some actual roughness on the edges down here as well, to simulate how old it is. I want to shade over here on the windowsill as well. And I'm going to want to put some bright spots on the edges where this curves. Not too much, of course. Then on the vase, I'm going to have like a bright spot there, and maybe some lines of brightness coming down this way. And as well, like around here, so where light would reflect. And on the distal end down here, I'm going to put some shading down here because, of course, light will be kind of falling down the edges away from us, that are going away from us on our field of vision. Probably going to put some shading down here as well to make there look darker, and some shading behind here to darken the areas where the light is least visible on the vase. Yeah, that should be it. Now as to the window, I'm not going to overcomplicate whatever is going on outside, so I may not put the sun in this one. Let's see, I'll probably put like the outline of a tree like coming this way. Maybe a bird sitting in the window right there. Sorry, bird, I know you are not the prettiest right now, but you will be at some point. And judging from the fall off of the lighting in the room, this would probably be a time of year where there's not a lot of leaves on the tree, so I'll put just a few, you know, like sprigs of leaves on this tree here. The rest of the leaves would have fallen off. And I'm thinking maybe I might have like a house or something. We'll see. Like over that side on a road. I am not 100% sure if I'm going to do the road like there or not. I could, but I may not. So we'll see. And up here would be grass. So just gonna shade that in like this. All down here would also be, well, that'd be sidewalk if I do a road, and then we'll have some grass as well along here. Yeah, so that's basically it in terms of where I want to go next week. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this stream today. I certainly had fun. This was a more relaxed and chill stream. Even though I've been kind of covering some techniques and stuff, still kept it chill today. On Thursday, you can look out for some CSS stuff. Depending on how my week goes, I may be dealing with different kinds of selectors like combinators and stuff and how you can use them. But I'll see about that. I definitely will be writing about that for my next installation of CSS fun stuff. So I'm not gonna give away what exactly I'm building, but I'm building something that will be pretty fun to work with and play with. so you can look out for that. Remember to subscribe to me on YouTube and Twitch, and follow me on Twitter if you have not as yet. You can also find me on Facebook, but don't really look for content there too much. I'm not too active, but just in case you're a Facebook user and you want to follow me there or connect with me there, I am available there. You can find all of my contact information on my website, rolandxr.pro and rolandxr.pro/streaming. Make sure to check out my stores as well, rolandxr on Redbubble, and also teespring.rolandxr.pro and rolandxr on Gumroad. That's where you can find my code, my wallpapers, and other stuff like that you can purchase, or some stuff you can grab for free. So yeah, make sure to check out my stores, subscribe to me on all my channels, and until next Tuesday, well, until Thursday, sorry, for those of you who are sticking around for code, see you again Thursday, and for those who are only here for graphics, see you next Tuesday. I am out.